Hello and welcome back to the Spookinge channel, a place for us to speak about all things horror. My name is Sam.
I'm Sarah.
In this video, we are going to look back at all the movies we watched in June, just give you what they were and what we thought of them, and then a little rating out of 10 from both of us so you can get that real insight into our feelings on the matter.
It was a bit of a lull month for us in June. We only managed to watch 6 films, but we were on holiday.
While we were away, I watched 2 movies on my iPad without Sarah, so there are 2 movies on here as well that Sarah has not seen, but we're still going to go through them, just tell you what I thought.
Yeah, it got a little bit too hot and I needed a nap. So, so there are 2 on here that I just have no thoughts. Smooth brain.
So the first movie we are going to talk about is 28 Years Later, which is obviously the long-awaited sequel to 28 Weeks Later, but also the beginning of its own trilogy. So 28 years after the initial outbreak, the UK has been quarantined from the rest of the world and left to its own devices. Spike, a boy who has never known life before the outbreak, lives on a secluded island with his family and community. The film follows Spike's coming of age as he takes his first trip to the mainland and becomes disillusioned with his father and takes a risky journey with his sick mother to find the last known doctor.
Now, we had 2 different opinions on this film, I think. I really enjoyed 28 Years Later, but I was kind of primed to love it no matter what. If you've watched any video on this channel, it's highly likely that I've mentioned how much I love 28 Days Later. And I think that this was much more reminiscent of 28 Days Later than Weeks, and I was really happy with it. Some weird moments, but I really loved that it had that emotional core to it like the first one does. I also thought that the acting was really good. I thought the actor that plays Spike was fantastic. He carried the film well. Ralph Fiennes is always standout no matter what he's in. You know he's there, and he was so good in this. I thought Jodie Comer also great. Her role had not a lot and almost the entire emotional crux of the movie on her back, so it was a weird mix of she's doesn't really do much, but the whole thing revolves around her. Aaron Taylor-Johnson takes me out of any film he's in. I don't know why. I love him. I think he's a fantastic actor, but any film he's in, I'm so aware that I'm watching Aaron Taylor-Johnson.
It's a strange thing because I kind of have the same thing now, and I think it's only since Bullet Train that it happens. But yeah, now it is the same thing with me. I just am so aware that I'm watching Aaron Taylor-Johnson and that he is not a man trapped on an island.
Yeah, it's like when we watch Nosferatu. That's a man that knows what an iPad is.
Yeah, yeah, that's your go-to whenever Sarah's trying to decide whether a performance is captivating or not.
Especially in a period
piece is whether that person knows what an iPad is. So you might hear that quite a lot if you come back to this channel.
Yeah.
I also liked in this movie our new infected types. I thought they were very cool. We get a couple of new types. We won't go into too much detail to avoid spoilers. But yeah, I think they did a really cool job in kind of coming up with these theories of evolution for where an infected population might go.
Yeah, I think the new types really reminded me of Left 4 Dead, the game. I think it works both as the end and the start of a trilogy. I'm not sure if we agree on that, but I really liked that it shows the evolution of where 28 Days started.
Yeah.
But then also this is an entirely new trilogy. We've got new zombies, which work as a natural conclusion of the first trilogy, but also a springboard for a new trilogy. Here's some new zombies, here's a new setting, here's what the world looks like now, and we're going to explore that further on. When we went into it, I didn't actually know that it was a trilogy. I didn't know that the next one was coming out in January, I think.
Yeah.
So the ending I was a little surprised about. I think we can talk a little bit about that without spoiling things. And you didn't like the ending very much.
No, I hated the ending.
Yeah,
it just tonally feels so out of place in this movie especially, but in the whole franchise. I didn't get on with it at all. It completely took me out of the film.
Yeah.
And I just kind of went, well, cool, all right.
Yeah, I do get that. It felt a lot more Black Mirror than 28 Days for me. And I think those two have shared qualities. But it did really feel like quite Charlie Brooker, his brand of comedy. I think the American audiences may not know who that is and why this is so divisive. And without spoiling the movie, in the end scene, Jack O'Connell rocks up dressed as Jimmy Savile.
Yeah, like Jimmy Savile cosplay. I will say, Jimmy Savile being in this bit is not any part of why I hate it.
No, it just doesn't make a lot of sense.
It's more like the scene itself for me is
kung fu fighting.
It's just wildly out of place.
Yeah, I think so. But I think knowing now that it's the start of a trilogy, it makes a little more sense to me. It's that maybe this is the tone that the next movie is going to have.
And I hope not. This movie does do a really good job in providing a lot of questions to the audience for like where things could lead, as you say, with like civilization in the mainland and zombie evolution or infected evolution. But I don't even know what it was. I literally could not tell you what it was about this movie that I didn't like. I just could not connect with it at all. I was sitting there through the whole thing really wanting to kind of enjoy it and like be all in. Yeah. And for some, it just didn't grip me. I don't know what it was.
I think when we saw it, it felt like there was a point where you realised, oh, I'm not waiting for the movie to begin. This is the movie. Yeah. There was a point in the film where you turned to me and you said, oh, is Aaron Taylor-Johnson going to get killed off early in the film? There's a chase scene where it's like you don't know who's going to get out of the chase scene. No spoilers, not going to tell you whether he gets out or not. And you said to me, are they going to kill him off this early in the movie? And I turned to you, I was like, we're an hour in.
It just time wasn't working properly for me. I don't know what it was. Yeah.
But yeah, overall, I really liked it. I went into this movie hearing reviews that people were crying at this film. And I was like, I just can't believe that. And then I cried in this film. It was so emotional. I wasn't expecting it, but I loved it.
So for our scores for 28 years later, I gave this a 6 out of 10. It was good. I think as well, my expectations going into it hurt it a little bit because I was really excited for it. So yeah, I was disappointed, but undoubtedly a good movie, like beautifully shot as well.
I think as well that's a really good point. Sorry, I know we're going into scores, but just a really good point before we get into my scores. The trailer was really misleading. The trailer made you think it was going to be exactly like 28 Days Later, and it wasn't. So I wonder if that has messed with people's enjoyment of the film. But moving on, I gave it a 9 out of 10 because I loved it. There was very little I didn't like about this movie. There was maybe a small section of 10 minutes where I thought, yeah, we don't necessarily need this, it's going on a bit. But other than that, I was in from the very beginning. I couldn't believe how quickly time was moving, and I cried. And I don't cry. Famously, I do not cry at films. I can name on one hand the amount of films that I've cried at, and this is one of them. If you're interested, it's The Last 5 Years, Marriage Story, 28 Years Later, and Hacksaw Ridge.
Yeah, one of these is not like the other.
Oh, and Twilight. I cried at Twilight where Bella yells at her dad.
There we go. but that was 28 years later. The next two movies up on this list are the two that I watched without Sarah. So they might be a little bit quicker, and it would just be me talking about them. The first one is Night Teeth, which I watched on the plane home. So this is about a boy named Benny who covers his brother's shift as a driver in LA for one night. His job, however, gets a little more complicated when he picks up two girls that turn out to be vampires. Not really a spoiler, that's literally the whole premise of the movie. And his job, as we would imagine, becomes a bit more dangerous. In my liked things about this movie, I've written that Debbie Ryan was better than expected. And that's it. This was bad. Basically, this was bad all the way through. There were some good tunes, some good music, if that is enough. Everything else is pretty poor. They are stunt casted in this movie as well, Megan Fox and Sydney Sweeney, and they have a conversation and then get killed off screen. So there you go.
Perfect.
The pièce de résistance of this movie is a cameo that ends in us not even seeing what happens.
Fair.
2 out of 10. And I will say that I have watched this, so you don't have to. And next up is Predator, Killer of Killers, which I watched on holiday on my iPad, and you fell asleep.
Literally during the logos.
But
yeah.
Planned fell asleep, not fell asleep because it was rubbish.
Oh yeah, I didn't fall asleep because it was bad. It was really hot and I was tired. I don't do the heat.
This is an anthology story, animated movie. 3 stories in one, so we get the shield, the sword, and the bullet. In The Shield, which is the one that kicks off our film, we follow a Viking warrior named Ursa, who is attacked by a Yautja, a predator, after leading her clan into battle against Zoran, who is the man who killed her father years ago. Then we move on to The Sword, in which an exiled shinobi returns home to confront his brother, who had defeated him in a duel as children to claim their father's castle. After the confrontation, Kenji is attacked by a Yautja hunter and must fight to survive. Then in our final segment, we follow John Torres, a naval officer who has to take to the skies when his squadron are set upon by a mysterious aircraft, which turns out to be a predator. Torres does battle with the ship through the skies. This was fantastic. What a great film. It's exactly what you expect going into it. So if you're up for a good time, with some cool kills and some really well thought out fight sequences involving some pretty nice new types and sizes of Predator, then yeah, a really, really, really good one. The music in this is fantastic. The sound editing is unreal. If you've seen Arcane, this follows a really similar art style to that. So it's very colourful, very in your face and kind of clear. So yeah, that was great. My only thing with this movie, and it's probably going to happen to everyone because we're not all interested in every era of history, is that modern fighter pilot thing is just not for me.
Yeah.
And I just wasn't particularly interested. A really, really good scene and a really good story with a really cool aerial fight sequence, but just not something that particularly interests me. So for me, the Viking story and the Shinobi story were really, really up there. This movie also ends in a way that has me really excited for what's to come and trying to think up what other guys in history could we get fight a predator, because after watching this you will want to see some more guys in history fight a predator, I can tell you that. I gave this a 9 out of 10.
One of the films we watched on streaming in June was Best Wishes to All, which is available on Shudder. Best Wishes to All follows a young nursing student visiting her grandparents. What begins as a regular, if a little awkward visit, descends into chaos as the unnamed protagonist discovers the horrifying secret her family and society at large have been keeping. There isn't much more I can tell you about the film without spoiling the film, and so I'm going to keep it short and I'm going to leave it there. I liked this film. I didn't think it was the best film we saw this month. I thought it was really beautifully shot. The cinematography was fantastic. It's a really conceptual movie.
Yeah.
And I was really interested in the concept, but I thought it didn't fully execute that concept.
Yeah, I struggled a little bit with that in this being a higher concept film, because of the language barrier, having to follow high concept whilst reading subtitles just gets really difficult and confusing for me. I struggle to kind of read that and watch that and kind of link them together. So the atmosphere and things that I think carry this movie got a little bit lost in me trying to read subtitles. So I think this may need a second watch.
I think so as well. I think it would be interesting watching it knowing the spoiler from the middle of the film. I think it would be really interesting to go back and watch it. And I think, like you say, it's hard to follow subtitles and be fully invested in the concept at the same time.
Yeah.
So now that we know what is happening, it might elevate our experience of the film, just being able to focus on one thing.
Yeah, I can absolutely imagine that on a second watch, I would appreciate this movie much more for what it is. For me, this was a bit too confusing.
Yeah, it did veer into that kind of area. And there were a few scenes that I didn't think were that necessary. There's a sequence where she goes to visit a family member, and I wasn't sure what the purpose of that was within the concept of the movie. But I did love the concept. It's so relentlessly nihilistic and depressing.
It is.
But I love those kind of films. It really reminds me of some good like Japanese literature that I've read. And yeah, I don't know. I was really into it, but I didn't think it was executed as well as it could have been.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think as well it kind of leans with those old J-horror movies in the sound effect department as well, like really good, really heavy on the sound design, where every time you get like a groaning or a moaning or something, it feels like it's like right in your ears, and you're like, oh,
yeah, it's very atmospheric. Sometimes potentially a little too atmospheric. But yeah, I did enjoy this movie. I gave Best Wishes to All 7 out of 10.
I gave it 6 out of 10. Just again, just a little too confusing for me. But yeah, would like to watch it again.
Next up, we have Dangerous Animals. Zephyr, a drifter, is kidnapped by Tucker, a man who really likes sharks. She must escape from his boat to avoid becoming his next home movie. This was a good movie. It was fun. It was violent. It was pretty visceral. It dragged a little bit. It falls into the classic survival movie trope of becoming a bit repetitive of, oh, I nearly got away, but I didn't. Oh, I nearly got away, but I didn't.
Yeah, there's probably one or two too many
I got away, but I nearly didn't.
misses in this one, yeah.
I think one of the best things about this film is its cast. Jay Courtney plays a really great horror villain. Australian horror is really hitting at the moment, isn't it? We're going to talk about another Australian horror in just a minute. But I think that Australian horror movies produce some of the best villains.
Yeah, the past few years especially, like that is where all the real surprising big ones are coming from.
Yeah, exactly. We really don't have too much to say on this film. It's kind of exactly what you think it's going to be, but in a good way. Yeah,
I would say I am not a big fan of sharks. Not sharks. Shark movies. I've got no beef with sharks. But this, for me, outside of like Jaws, which is obviously great, does tension the best I've seen in a shark movie. But yeah, there's moments of this film where are like genuinely tense and had me kind of on the edge, going to be like, oh my god, like what's happening here? What's going on? Which I thought they did a really good job of, because I think it's easy when your setting is like a boat.
A boat.
I think it's easy to fail at that.
Yeah.
And just become a bit like, oh.
But no, it's interesting. Every beat is interesting. It's just that there are a few too many escape attempts, in my opinion. I also want to throw it out there that you mentioned Jaws, and I have never seen Jaws.
No, I know.
Yeah, I got scared by the Jaws ride in Disney when I was 5 years old, and I have never seen Jaws because of that. But maybe I can watch it now because I've seen this shark movie.
Yeah, maybe maybe you're over sharks.
Maybe.
Hopefully.
I gave Dangerous Animals 7 out of 10. Not the best film we saw this month, but it was still good. It was still fun. The villain was great. So, yeah, about a 7.
Yeah, I gave this movie an 8 out of 10. I did really enjoy it. It had its issues, for sure, but I thought it was definitely fun enough and just better than I expected. I think this probably has the opposite to 28 years, where I think 28 years I expected so much of and it disappointed. Whereas this, I kind of went in like, who knows? And came out, being like, oh, it's actually really fun. So yeah, 8 out of 10 for me.
Next up, we've got Sissy, our second Australian horror film that we watched in June. A mental health influencer, Cecilia, not Sissy, very much not Sissy,
No.
reconnects unexpectedly with a childhood friend, Emma, who invites her to her engagement party and hen weekend. Unbeknownst to Cecilia, the hen weekend is being hosted by her childhood bully, who is now Emma's best friend. This uncomfortable watch takes a turn for the worst when Cecilia overhears Emma's friends making fun of her. This leads to a gloriously violent final act filled with great kills, tension, and beautiful hallucinations.
This falls into a category of horror movie that I've really started to enjoy, and it's these like heavily stylized, really bright color palette kind of movies. I don't know what it is about them, but they've really started to connect with me, and I really like that. And this was just a good example as well of one of those movies. I said in our 5-word short, if you watch those, about this movie's use of juxtaposition, and I will say it here because I stand by its effectiveness. There are so many points in this movie where we'll have like a real visceral scene going on, whether that's just like emotional bullying or like physical harm, and it's kind of mixed with just this little melancholy soundtrack or like a really nice bright color palette, like a calming, what you would see as a calming color, and I just think it works so well. Yeah,
it's a beautiful movie style wise, and kind of what you're saying about the color palette and things like that. It's kind of reminiscent of I Saw the TV Glow, and this also could come under LGBTQIA plus horror, depending on how you want to view their storyline. I think teenage female friendships are often messy and blurred and confusing, and I think this captures that so well. I think I said in the short, it's the natural conclusion of female friendships.
You did, yeah.
Which I think makes it sound like I don't like female friendships. I love female friendships. I love the girlies. I love my girls. But adolescent friendships, which this is based on, are horrifying, awful experiences. And if you never grow out of that phase, that's where you're going to end up. But I loved this film. I love films that explore female friendships, adolescence, the horror of being a teenage girl. I love films like that because it is the worst experience. I don't know if it's just me, but the worst period of my life was being a teenage girl.
Yeah, all of that in this movie as well culminates in some like genuinely good and surprisingly nasty like kills, some real violent,
it's really violent,
with like full practical effects, which are done incredibly well. I love a practical effect as well. I'm so glad when I watch a movie and everything's done practically, it just hits so much harder.
Yeah, it just all looks incredible. The effects look incredible. The cinematography is incredible. There are some scenes that are, I think, more hallucinations, and they really reminded me of I Saw the TV Glow, with the cabin and the stars. Yeah. I thought they were so beautiful. I just thought it was overall a really great film.
It is a really great film, really fun watch.
Yes, maybe a couple scenes where it's a bit like, okay, let's get this show on the road. But I thought it was great. The characters are all fantastic.
Yeah, the cast do a really good job as well. It's very well written. I think this movie as well really nicely treads that line between horror and comedy.
Yeah, 100%.
I think so many films lean too much one way or too much the other. I think this kind of nails it.
Yeah, I think Australian horror films do dark comedy so well.
Yeah. So all of that said, I gave this movie an 8 out of 10. So the same as Dangerous Animals. I probably, to be honest, enjoyed it a little more than Dangerous Animals. It just didn't belong in the tier above quite. But yeah, this movie was fantastic. Just a couple of little bits that I would have liked to go a little bit differently. But other than that, yeah, 8 out of 10. Really, really good film.
I also gave this film an 8 out of 10. I loved it, but like you say, I'm not sure it belonged with the films in the 9 out of 10 tier. I definitely enjoyed it more than Dangerous Animals and Best Wishes to All. So I didn't think it sat with the 7s. But my 9 out of 10, I don't really give 10 out of 10s, do I? So 9 out of 10 is my 10 out of 10, realistically. And I didn't think it quite sat there. 10 out of 10 is reserved for the most special films. Last year or the year before, I gave I Saw the TV Glow a 10 out of 10. I just can't, it's not as good as that. So yeah, I gave it an 8 out of 10.
So that was our look back at the movies we watched in June of 2025. I hope you enjoyed it. Please offer your comments down below. Tell us what you thought, if you saw any of these movies, what you think of them, if you've seen any other movies in June that you believe we need to watch.
We're always open to recommendations, so we'd love to hear from you. So comment below.
Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more. Hit that little notification bell so you know when our next video goes live. And then until next time,
Bye.
bye.